Okay, hello and welcome to everybody on the call. This is a DVW Analytics webinar around our Power BI connectors for SAP. It's great to see so many older faces that we've familiar with from our customer base, but also new faces as well. So either way, I hope you learn something new, something about our products, and something about how we connect to Power BI. So the agenda today, broken down, as you can see, into 6 sections, a few introductions and housekeeping, but then on to the crux of the webinar, taking you from the basics of getting connected to Power BI and how we can help you bring your SAP data seamlessly into your Power BI solutions, looking at how we control data from within Power BI, making sure we get exactly the data we need from SAP, how we build dashboards, and how we automate that by using the Power BI portal and our tools that service that server area, if you like. Then finally, just a few glimpses forward on what we have on the roadmap. So those introductions. Firstly, myself, my name's Ian James. I work on the commercial team here at DVW Analytics. I'm going to be doing most of the talking today. But I also have on the line my esteemed colleague, the CEO of DVW Analytics, Darren Walton. He's probably going to be, which is rare for him, fairly quiet for the majority of the call of the webinar. But what he is ready and waiting for your questions. You'll see that within the console that you have the ability to ask questions. I encourage you to do that as they come to your mind. Darren will be answering those as best he can during the course of the webinar, and of course if we can't get to every question, then we'll make sure that we follow up afterwards. Okay, let's press on. So as we said, the first main part here is just how do we connect Power BI to your SAP data. You'll know that DVW Analytics, or maybe you don't if you're new to us, are a company who have been around 7 or 8 years now, and our reason for being, if you like, is to connect SAP data to multivarious platforms where we can consume that data in terms of analytics, maybe data lakes, etc. The type of platforms we currently support, it's not an exclusive list, but obviously on the left, we're going to focus on Power BI today, but equally we can connect directly into Tableau. We can connect into data science platforms, primarily like Alteryx and 9, but also in the cloud Data IQ. And if we think about something like a data lake, we can connect also directly into Snowflake. So lots of possibilities there. And again, all of these are focused on getting your SAP data into those platforms, and in some cases being able to use those platforms to write data back into SAP. As we said, today we're just going to focus on Power BI, however. If you're interested in more, please come to our website. So in terms of SAP, when we say we connect to SAP, we connect almost to it all. Anything with SAP on the label is the way we put it. So if you're running ECC, say on the ERP side, all the way through to the more modern versions of SAP ERP like S/4HANA, and that's on premise or even in the cloud, private or public, then we can connect into those systems and pull that data, make it available for you in Power BI. You can see there are other systems out here, and this I mentioned we'll talk about the roadmap later, but these are systems where we're looking to connect to in the very near future. Some of our other tools already do this, so we're looking to mirror that. Things like the cloud solutions for SAP, C4C, Marketing Cloud, the standalone solutions, SuccessFactors, Ariba, and Concur, and even IBP. Okay. So the way our tool works for the Power BI, and if we focus in on Power BI now, is that we have, if you like, 2 different flavors. We can work at the desktop level, and as you'll see as we go through the slide pack here, our tool is is a piece of software that sits on your desktop, is part of your Power BI. It's embedded within your Power BI, and it enables you to build connectivity to your SAP system. However, all that good work that you do to build those connections can be shared to the wider community in your enterprise by publishing up to a server version. And that server version is designed to work seamlessly with the Power BI Gateway and the Power BI portal so that you can share your analytics, your data set widely across the community. So without further ado, without getting into too much technicalities, let's show you it working. It's always the best to see it happening. The proof is in the eating, as they say. So let's just have a quick look at how that works within Power BI itself and a live demonstration. I'm desperately looking for the right one to click. Of course, I can't see it off the top of my head. It's not the end of the world. I'll just create a new one. There we go. There we are. Okay, so we're in Power BI here. We start by, as we do with any other Power BI report, dashboard, piece of data, identifying a source of that data, and it's no different here. So we're going to get data from a source. Now, I mentioned that our software is an add-in. So if I put DVW here, you'll see that because I have that add-in, I have some extra sources available to me. Okay, I'm going to choose the bottom one here, and that allows me to connect into my SAP data connections. Okay, you can see within the Power BI screen here, then, if I look to edit those, I have a whole bunch of connections that I've already created. And they reflect the different ways that we can connect into SAP. So things like tables, BW queries, T codes, etc., etc. Okay, we'll come to that list later. But let's start with a T code. If I want to create a new connection, I just create a new data set from within Power BI. Now that brings me into a wizard type front end, and I can choose exactly how I want to build that connection. You can see different types of objects, if you like, within SAP that I can connect to. As I said, I'm going to start with a transaction code or an ABAP report. And I can also then, because I've configured this within my system, pick up the different SAP systems that I have. Now, I have a whole suite of them, of course, because of all the demonstrations I get to do. But you can see that it's simply very much like your SAP logon pad. And indeed, if you have the SAP GUI available, you can use that as the configuration that we can port across into here very easily. Don't worry if you don't have the GUI, we can still run and we can still set you up. I'm going to use my ECC system here, and I'm going to put in a transaction, although I can run a report for those who know those work with sort of SM37 type reports. So however, I'm going to run a transaction code. So FBL3N. Okay, this is a finance transaction code, very commonly used. It gives you line items in the general ledger. When I search for that, it's going to talk to my SAP system, and it's brought back basically the parameter screen that I can now complete. So for instance, I could include a particular company code I'm interested in, a range of GLs, some dates, even a layout. You can see down the bottom here, exactly as you would see within the SAP GUI. Equally, if you're lazy and you're doing a demonstration, you can use variants. So these are the variants of saved parameters that are saved over on the SAP side, and you can see that I can pick one of these and I can run with that straight away, because that's a set of parameters that I could run with. Equally, I can pull those parameters across into my connection here, and you can see that those values that have been saved on SAP are a particular company code, a range of GLs, posting dates, etc., etc. So let's design now my extractor. Okay, if I design the report and I just click on next, what that does is it runs the transaction codes, the transaction code with those parameters. And you can see here that the The output is sort of typical that you'd see in the SAP GUI. It works in the way that you've got for every combination of GL and company code that is available in the output, you get a table, a small mini table with some totals, and then for the next pairing, if you like, the next combination, you get another mini table, and so on and so on. Now the tool has identified this, or looked at this and worked out that, hey, this line here it sees, and it's color coded it yellow, is a header row, and that's correct. Okay, so it's picked up that this is a header row for this table, and indeed for all those other little tables. Okay, it's also picked up these header values. Now the header values are really awkward. If you've ever tried to extract this into Excel and then play around and get these values into the data, it's a challenge. But the tool does this for you. It identifies them and it says, I'm going to bring these three values here into the data. Now, maybe I don't agree with what it's saying. I can always change this, but certainly maybe I'm not too worried about the description. So I can just say, hey, I don't want the description. Equally, I could change to any other ones and add ones that haven't been picked up. The final step is to exclude things that aren't needed, to ignore rows. So anything that's blank or has dashes is ignored automatically. And the system has picked up that this totals row should be ignored too. Quite often, you don't want the totals to come through. They can be messy, and you can always consolidate those totals later in your analytics. So it's picked those up. We could ignore those and change that if we like, but we're happy with that. So I'm going to carry on now and say, look, hey, let's preview the data. So you'll remember what the T code looked like when it came from SAP. What we're actually going to pass to Power BI is much cleaner. Okay, it's a flat table. It has columns that have been passed. It has those header values in their own column. And all the extras, the totals and the blank lines and the dashes have all gone. Once we're happy with this, yeah, hey, let's confirm that design. And now we can save this as a connection. Okay, as I said, we've got lots of those connections. You saw them before. Here they are again, but let's create a new one. FBL 3N underscore web for webinar. Okay, FBL 3N web, save. Okay, so let's save that particular connection, that particular configuration of a call back into SAP. Now I can go back into my Power BI system and open the data set, and you'll be able to see under FBL3N that here I have my connection. And indeed, when I click on it, it's going to allow me to preview that data and load the data too. Okay, so you can see what it's doing now is talking to our console. It's running that connection. It's pulling the data that I've just configured live straight back from SAP into Power BI. And if I click on here, you'll get a table of that data. So you can see how easy it is for a business user. If you're used to using a T code, if you can run a T code in SAP, you can run a T code over in here in Power BI. What's more is, if I take this a little bit further, if I go to transform this data using Power Query, here's the data as it stands. So that was one way of getting the data in. Another is to use a blank query, because as part of the add-in, you also get some functions that you can use within Power Query. So if we put equals, and again, it's DVW is the key here. So equals DVW, then you can see there are extra functions here. So I'm going to go get some data from DVW. I'm going to call my FBL3N, my connection, FBL3N underscore web. And at any point, I can use this function to go and get that data that I've configured. So this is, again, running the transaction code and pulling the relevant data across into Power BI. And of course, once you're in Power Query, you can manipulate the data. You can combine it with other data sets. Even better, we can go one step further again. Once we're in here, we can say, hey, as well as just pulling the data set as it stands as a fixed data set, I can make it much more dynamic. So what I can do is I can say, hey, I've got company code 3000, but actually I want to change this. I want to say, hey, give me company code equal to 1000. So this time, rather than using what was saved just now and under a particular value for company code 3000, I can pass back and control how that T code is working, how that transaction code is working. I've passed back the 1000 as a filter. It overwrites the 3000 that is already there, but still runs everything on the T code, still does all the work to cleanse it, passes the data back, and you can see that we have data for company code 1000. Again, really flexible, really easy to use within Power BI. Okay, a couple more slides and then more demos in a short while. So you can start to see how Power BI is flexible and has the ability to dynamically pull data from SAP. And the DVW Analytics connectors for SAP allow you to do that. The way it works is shown on this diagram. It's fairly high level, but it gives you an idea of the structure. Okay. We've already seen, I'm going to start right to left. So we've already seen that in Power BI, we have that PQCS, Power Query Connector for SAP. It's an add-in within Power BI. And this is our software sitting there. And you've already seen that when we search for the DVW connections, when we use the DVW functions within Power Query. That sits in there and enables us to talk to a piece of software that is sitting on your desktop. Okay, and that piece of software is called the Connection Console, XES Connection Console. XES because it's cross connector for SAP. The cross implies, of course, that yes, we can connect to Power BI, but you'll remember all the other possible platforms that we can connect to. So obviously this is a common hub for those connections. The responsibility of that console is to talk back to SAP, to hold the structure of those calls, those connections, and to call back to SAP, and when asked, to bring back the relevant data. Now we've seen that could be T-code data, as we've just seen. Equally, it could be table data, BW queries, HANA views, and coming soon, things like being able to pull from OData. That covers off the cloud solutions, things like S4HANA public solution, which connects using OData and even using BAPIs. Okay, so everything is connected, and central is the connection console. What we've also seen just now is that we can control exactly how that connection, how that call looks from within Power BI. We can pass back parameters that dynamically change the structure of that call. Either way, we're pulling data back from SAP. The console does that work and passes that data straight into Power BI. Okay, so let's take it a step further. Next demo. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a query this time. Okay, it connects in exactly the same way, but where we left off last time, we were in the Power Query. Okay, so if we take it a step further, we can say, okay, we can manually maintain paste the company code or whatever it may be, but equally, within a BW query or a T code or whatever it may be, we have variables, we have filters available to us. So if we create parameters on the Power BI side, so you can see here a few obvious parameters, a calendar month from and to, business partner from and to, a transaction type. Okay, all of this is just Power BI. Okay, I'm creating parameters. I can blend those together and create a set of filters. Okay, now the set of filters is key here because we can pass these, as we've seen, we can pass individual hard-coded filters, say like the company code equals 1000, but we can also send back a table of filters. Okay, and what's nice here is that this table of filters enables us to add multiple filters into that call. So when we go to the query, we can see that within our BW demo query, and this is just the connection on the console that I've saved, I can apply those filters. Okay. Now, if I run this, then you can see that it gives me my output, and I can refresh this at any time. And this goes for all of our connections. So we can refresh this data. It will make a new call to SAP, whether it be ECC, HANA, BW, wherever the data may be, it will pull that data. However, because we've added those parameters, then we can edit those parameters. So we can create dynamic dashboards. Okay. So in here, we see the parameters that we added over on the Power Query side, and we can even give drop-down lists. So we can say, hey, change the transaction type to a different transaction type. Go get me the new data. And that's, of course, making a new call back to the console. It's passing back those filters that you can see in the bottom right-hand side of the screen with the new transaction type applied. And you saw it change that data set for me on the fly, dynamically. Okay. Equally, we can do exactly the same type of thing with the T code. This is FBL3N. We've done it using our manual piece where we're going into Power Query and having to manually maintain that. But if we use parameters, then it's much more user-friendly. In fact, it becomes a bit like running a T code anyway, except off the back of it, you've got all possibilities for graphics, for manipulations, for calculations. So if I'm looking in here, maybe I want to change from company code 3000 now go to 1000. I'll say OK, and that's going to apply those changes. It's going to run the T code again and pull back the relevant data for me, but do all the work that you've programmed into your Power Query set of steps. So absolute tight integration that we see here between SAP, our console, the connections that you build there, and your outputs here in terms of analytics. And right on time, there's the data for my new company code. Okay, moving on. Let's add some more layers. So we've seen that we can be very dynamic already, but we can build even more into more complexity into what we build on the Power BI side. The reason for that is the way this works. And I just want to dive a little bit slightly deeper and to talk about how the whole thing works, just to maybe allay some fears, maybe just to give some information. So what we've seen already is what's on your PC, what you see here, or some of what's on your PC. Here's Power BI with your add-in from DVW. You've also got our console, which obviously controls all those connections. And then we move into the realm of SAP. Now, the way our connectivity works is very powerful, very safe and secure, and this is why. It works in exactly the same way as something like the SAP GUI or Analysis for Office, or indeed pretty much any other standard SAP front-end device. Okay, the way it works is it uses a set of libraries that sit on your laptop. Okay, and in a standard way connects in and creates a dialog process on what's called the application server of your SAP system. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're coming from the GUI for Analysis for Office or our console, you need to have a logon. So credentials for the SAP system that you're talking about. Okay, you need a username and password or maybe single sign-on. Either way, we connect in and our authorizations are then applied. That means we can only see the data that we are allowed to, that we're authorized to. Equally, your SAP team have put safety belts, limitations on how much data you can extract in any one time, and how much time, how much resource time from the SAP system that you use within any one call. That makes, and it must be said, that as well as SAP respecting those functionalities, those safety belts and authorizations, our tools in exactly the same way respect those limitations. Therefore, we can do no harm. Okay? It is totally safe and secure way of connecting into your SAP system. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't extract huge amounts of data if needed. You can, and there are ways around that without hurting the SAP system. But as you can see, we respect exactly the safety belts, the authorizations that have been put in place by your SAP team, as do SAP GUI and Analysis for Office. Okay, I'm going to show you a little use case next of how we can pull data in that way. This time it's going to be around tables. Okay, so SAP tables. We can connect them to the granular form, and often this is where the huge amounts of data come in. And to extract huge amounts of data, by the way, we have functionalities that allow you to split, to break down those calls and into smaller bite-sized chunks, as it were, that fall below the safety belt limits, but still allow you to extract the data you want in a very efficient way. So this use case, if we look on the Power Query side, we look at it as in terms of a series of steps. Okay, and I'll show you this on the system in a second. The series of steps involve, as I said, connections to SAP and SAP tables. So the premise of this is to pull out master data for your materials, but you want to include some descriptions. You may or may not know that the descriptions sit on a separate table in SAP. So immediately you then got to think about pulling two sets of data. But this isn't a problem. It isn't a problem to combine those two sets of data, but in a clever way. So what we might do is extract data, exactly the materials we're interested in. Say we might want to look at particular material types. So we've seen we can apply filters. So let's have a filter for particular material types, and we'll make a call via a connection on the XCS console to SAP, which will source that data for us, and we bring that back into Power Query. Once that step's done, in Power Query, we can then say, hey, right, okay, we know what materials we're talking about. Let's create that list, a list of those materials. So we can take the data that we just brought back. It's got all the master data, that's fine. But essentially, we know the list of materials we're interested in. We can use that list of materials to filter the descriptions we want. And this is a really important point, because what we're doing here is we're being very efficient, very surgical in the way we extract our data. So we're saying exactly which materials we want, but only bringing back the descriptions for those materials. Equally, it's just then a connection back to a table, MAKT in this case, within SAP. SAP provides that information, and then we're in the land of Power BI, Power Query. So we can combine the two data sets, the master data and the descriptions, and then we can populate our output, a dashboard, analyses, whatever it may be. Okay. So let's take a look at what that looks like within Power BI. So here we are in Power Query. And this Power Query is exactly what you've just seen. Step by step, the steps you see here are exactly the steps I mentioned. We start with a filter. You remember from the last example, this is just a filter. And in this case, it's several filters of material type. Okay, so I would only want these particular material types. I don't want all materials in the system. That may be thousands, millions in some cases. So we're being very surgical, very precise about what we're focusing on. It could be 8, it could be 2, who cares? Notice also, just while we're in here, that we have this possibility to split, okay? And it's this that breaks up those calls. With material master data, it's unlikely that you're going to get to a huge number, even if you do have 1 million materials, okay? However, if you go across to finance or logistics or production, then you get huge tables in SAP. You may need all that data. However, if you try to pull it all in one lump, then you're going to bump into those safety belts that I mentioned earlier. It's here that we can break down those calls. So if we change this value here, I'm not going to do it now, but we can change these values here to true. What that will do is, instead of making one huge call to pull the data back, it will make 8 separate calls, obviously, which are smaller chunks, smaller, more bite-sized chunks that will stay below, hopefully, those limits, those safety belts. That way we can pull all that data in. The console will do all that work, but then bundle all the data back together once it's out of SAP and pass it back to Power BI as one data set, one complete data set. Okay, so we've got our filters. I'm then going to look for my master data. You can see I've applied my table filters. So I'm only pulling back material master data from Mara 101, and it's only in those particular material types. We said we're going to take this set of data, this master data, and I'm going to create a list just of the materials. And the reason I want to do that is because that material list becomes the filter, or the set of filters, for my next call. And that's to get the text, the descriptions for my materials. Here they are, MAKT, 101 is the connection, but I've applied as a filter that list of materials. You can see then that I get the descriptions I want. Now I'm in the land of Power BI. So all I need to do now is combine those two data sets, and you can see I get my master data, and then away on the right-hand side connected to it, I get the descriptions too. Now I've got my data set, all is good. I can come back into Power BI. If I click on the right thing, I can. And here's my data set in Power BI. And of course, then I can manipulate it, build analyses, etc., etc. Here's one I built earlier. So I can take my master data and then have a dashboard of the health of the nation, if you like. Hey, where are the missing material groups? Where are missing descriptions? Okay, and we have a dashboard which is fully dynamic. And of course, if we wish, we can connect and refresh that data at any point to get up-to-date data of where we are, where the state of the nation is with your materials. Okay, so we've done lots on the dashboard there. Excuse me, on the desktop there. We can build dashboards, we can run T-codes, we can run and control BW queries. You can see that there are masses of data that we can bring in and manipulate. There's no limit to what we can bring into our analyses. We can combine data from ECC and maybe pull a hierarchy from BW and combine the two sets. It doesn't have to be SAP data, of course. We can pull data from elsewhere. If we've got data sitting in Excel, we can combine that too. Power Query allows us to do that manipulation and that combination. Really powerful tool. Now that's all on the desktop level, okay? So that's great. You see, to a degree, it's manual in that you've got to press go, hey, refresh the data, please, etc., etc. If we want to automate that, if we want to collaborate with others in our organization, then the way to go is to a more enterprise solution, such as server and solutions like the Power BI portal. That's where we're going now. And as you've already seen, our tools are ready to use with the Power BI Gateway and the Power BI portal. Okay, you won't be surprised at that. It's worth noting that another couple of capabilities, we're able to extract deltas from SAP. There are ways and means of doing that. We can, as I mentioned, I think we can connect by a single sign-on. So hopefully that covers off some of your question around there. And as we said, we fully respect those governance and controls. When we get to the enterprise level, then this is a very high level diagram of how it works. The top row here you've seen before, it's the desktop piece. So you can see we've got SAP, we've got our connection console where all our connections sit, and Power BI desktop and that connectivity. That was the slide earlier on. Okay, now we go to the next level, the level below, where we're pushing and using the enterprise server environments to make this more robust, more large scale, and more collaborative with others in your organization. In terms of the build, typically you will build your connections at the desktop level. What you then do is you publish those connections across, together with the credentials, into the server version of our console. Okay, and typically this sits very close to your enterprise gateway, your Power BI enterprise gateway. Within there, it will have an add-in, and it's this conversation that enables the connectivity up into the portal. When you're in the portal, you can feed the dashboards and reports and the analytics that you've built on the desktop and publish across onto the portal side. And from within the portal itself, you can use the enterprise gateway to then obviously share and be collaborative with your outputs, but also to schedule your updates. So on a daily, hourly, whatever it may be basis, you can update the data that you see on the Power BI side in the portal. So we can update the data on a regular basis from SAP using the schema that you see below. Okay, a quick example of that, if I can find it. Here we go. So we're looking at our master data analysis here. So let's take that a step further. That's on the desktop here. I'm very happy with this, but I'm now going to save this. Okay, so I'm going to save it as the webinar dashboard. Okay, so webinar dashboard there, and save it. Now that's saved onto my dashboard, and as we said, we can use it here on dashboard level, but it'd be great if we could use it and collaborate with our colleagues. So we can publish that. That allows you to publish it to the Power BI portal, and you can see that my workspaces appear. I'm going to push it into this workspace here, select it, and that now takes my analysis. It takes all the metadata underneath it, so the structure of that data set, and pushes it to Power BI, okay, to the portal. I can whiz across to there, so I can open now my dashboard over in the portal. You can see I'm now in the web. Hopefully you'll recognize what comes. There's the output that I've just built. So here's my dashboard. And if I like, and if that's the end point, I've collaborated, if you like, I can push that to a place that is visible by my colleagues who need to see this data. And if I like, I could come in at the desktop level and republish every day, every month, whatever necessary, and just push the data out and it will update. It becomes a dashboard that's available to all. Okay. Much more useful, however, we can take it further. We can say, hey, we want to automate that process. We don't want to have to press the button every day. So we can go across to my workspace, and we can see at the bottom here my webinar dashboard. Okay, and we can maintain a schedule for this webinar dashboard. You remember that what's important here is the connection to the gateway. So I'm going to connect and make a connection into that gateway so that my excuse me, my data set, my semantic model can talk to the gateway And if I wish, I can refresh this on a schedule. So I can choose exactly when I want this to run. Okay. For now, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and just show that I can refresh it. So if I come down the bottom here, I go to my my model. I say refresh now. This simulates obviously a run on a scheduled basis, but that is now looking for new data over in SAP. It's making the calls, running through the Power Query steps that we've seen, and bringing all that data back into the Power BI portal. All of that is happening at the server level. To see that over on our console, this is our console, by the way. This is a view directly into the console. Here are all my connections. You can see that I'm on the local version, okay? And you'll remember that I was connecting to Mara and MAKT. So these two are the guys here, okay? I can publish those. I can say, hey, I like these. I'm going to send them to the remote server. If I flick to the remote server, I can see that they're sitting there, okay? Mara and MAKT. And it's these that are running when I schedule from the portal. It's this system, the remote server, that's running the connectivity this time. If I go back, hopefully now everything is done. I can see that if I look at my refresh history, that it has refreshed, it's completed. Okay, and that data now is updated, and of course that's where the schedule comes in. You run that on the schedule, it will be updated every day, every hour as necessary. So how could it be used? Well, maybe I'm tasked with creating my daily management overview. Okay, it's something that by its nature and its title won't surprise you, is created daily. So it involves me go and get data from SAP, putting it into graphs and doing whatever, and presenting it to the management. You can imagine the scenario. However, what's great is now we've got Power BI Portal and we've got our published dashboard. I can go and embed that Power BI into my PowerPoint here. You can see that it's connecting to my published models here. And you remember our webinar dashboard, we can click on here. That's going to connect me to my portal. It's going to bring back, and you'll recognize this, of course, my beautiful dashboard. And it allows me to present that as I wish. You'll notice down in the bottom corner, this is live data. We can take snapshots of the data, but equally, you can see that this one was updated just now. We can refresh it. We can say, hey, refresh the data with the data that is currently in the Power BI portal. So if you've got this on a refresh on a daily basis, when I do my presentation tomorrow, I just need to say, hey, hit refresh, and the whole of my presentation will be updated with new data from the Power BI portal, which of course came from XCS, DVW console, and SAP. Okay, so you've seen hopefully some ideas there. It's got your juices flowing, light bulbs are lighting up of ideas and ways to use Power BI with SAP connected by our software. You've seen already the type of connectivity that's possible to all sorts of different systems. Just to give you some idea of what's on the roadmap, there's lots happening at the moment. You've seen that we cover multiple platforms. Alteryx is probably the one that we've connected to for the longest and been working with, collaborating with for the longest. But as you can see, in the vast majority of the main functionalities are available within Power BI. Others will come this year in short order. We're working on them as you speak. So we'll be able to have an absolutely full set of extractors from all types of SAP systems very, very soon. Okay, at that point, I'll stop speaking. Hopefully you've been asking lots of questions, but I'll hand over to Darren just to close out and do the nice piece of giving you a bonus for sitting through listening to me. Darren.
Yeah, hi Ian. That's pretty good. And thanks everybody for the questions. My fingers are bleeding. I've typed responses to quite a few over the last 45 minutes. So we usually at DVW offer 30-day trials of our software. What we'd like to do is for well over 100 people who attended the session live today. If any of you are really interested in what we're doing here and would like to kick the tires and trial our Power BI connector for SAP further, I'm pleased to offer you exclusively a 60-day trial. You will just need to come to our website, dvwanalytics.com, and register for trial of the Power BI connector. Ignore the fact it says 30 days on the forms, and we'll give you 60 days of access so you can really test the capabilities of the product out. This will be followed up. We'll follow up with you anyway next couple of days with a link to the recording and this information, and we've also been asked to provide some pricing information as well. Okay, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session. Ian, I'll leave it to you to close down.